All right, so again, I'm Brian with SMMware, and today we're going to be doing a general tour of SMMware and all of its various capabilities. Our tour is divided into 4 main tracks, and this first one we're going to be going through clients and sales leads and what SMMware can do for you regarding sales, and talk about clients and jobs, invoices, and file uploading, a few other things. All right, so that's our first track, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're here on the home page of SMMware, and we're going to assume that you're getting an incoming phone call from a potential client. So we're going to go over to our sales leads. We're going to start a new sales lead. And in SMMware, there are 3 fundamental records that it's important to understand. And the idea is based on return business. So we separate out a client profile from the sales lead. The client profile holds information about the clients that doesn't change when they move from place to place. Their name, of course, their phone number, their email address. And then we create a sales lead for each opportunity that we have with them. And within that sales lead, we can create 1 or more sales quotes. The sales lead is kind of a bucket where you hold things about this opportunity that are separate from the actual quote that you give to the client. And then the third record that we have is the job record. So right now we're looking at a start of a sales lead. If this was an existing returning client, they would already be in this list. But we are saying that this is your first opportunity talking with them. So we are going to take a little detour while we're creating a sales lead, and we are going to create a client record. Some of the fields that are worth pointing out here is that we have not just 1, but 3 fields regarding who referred the business to you. And that is so that you can have a referral report that you can search based on categories. So we start with the high level, the categories such as maybe the corporate website or a seminar that you gave, and we can drill down to the company and the person. We also have the ability to add a client representative. If they are already in the system, they would be in this list. If they are brand new to you, like a client's family member most likely would be, then you'd hit the plus sign and add them. And we can also indicate the relationship. We have some custom fields. You can put whatever labels you want on them, but the thinking here is that this is information about them that does not change when they move from place to place, because this is the client profile. We also have a place to put in their address. And we can arrange for your repeat addresses like senior living centers to appear in this list. Start typing it out and then pick it when it comes up. SMMware will fill in the address for you so you don't have to memorize it and you don't have to cut and paste. So this is the client profile. We're going to save this. Now we went back to the main sales lead that we had started before. And here we're going to point out the different sales lead status levels. This is something that you can create your own list. This is the list that you would get by default when you start a SMMware site. Moving down, we've got some automations that SMMware provides for you. When the customer tells you, well, we're going to make a decision towards the end of August, you can put in that date. SMMware will create a task. It will assign it to the lead salesperson and give it a due date matching the customer decision date. So basically, SMMware's going to email you and tap you on the shoulder and say that it's time to get in touch with the potential client if you haven't already heard from them. When you do give them a quote, that is the submission date. So that's today. And that, of course, is too soon to be contacting them to see if they've made a decision. So in our settings, you can configure an elapsed time, and then SMMware will create a task with a due date equal to that time. So it might be 1 week out or 2 weeks out. And once again, SMMware is going to email the lead salesperson and say, hey, it's time to talk to them to see what they think. For our sales lead, we also have a score that has weighted factors, and you can set the weights on the different factors, but the different factors are things like the value of the quote, how long it's been in the system, how much activity there has been under that how much activity has been under that sales lead. So these are all things that if you are busy enough that you can't put a lot of time and effort towards all of your sales leads, then this will help you decide which ones you should prioritize. Moving down, just like we saw for the client profile, the sales lead profile has some custom fields. You can put whatever labels you want to on these fields as well. But these are things that do change when you move from place to place, when you move the client from place to place. The elevator code or garbage day, things like that. And once again, we also have the ability to put in an address, start typing that out, and then SMMware lets you pick it, and it will fill in the address for you. Here we have something called the status board. This appears on the home page as well. You can create your own tags. This is what you would get by default: cold lead, medium lead, hot lead. Also, the text of this field can be pre-filled. And this is a common theme throughout SMMware. Our idea is to indicate to the user different kinds of information that you would like them to collect at this phase of the game. But you are not locked in. If some of this does not apply, you can always just get rid of it. Go ahead and save this sales lead. Oh, so I have to set a status first. I was also going to point out that you can hover over fields to get some useful information. There are two kinds of helper information that SMMware offers. Sometimes when you hover over the field, you get this black pop-up. And then there's also a question mark. If you hover over it, you do have to hold still. If you are moving around, it won't pop up anything. I'll go ahead and save. All right, so now we have our sales lead. I'd like to show you what it's like to upload files within SMMware. And I'll point out the long cryptic file names, the kind that your phone likes to assign. We'll come back to that in a moment. And I'll also point out that you are uploading multiple files at once. Next, we can assign a tag. And going back to those cryptic file names, SMMware offers the auto rename function. And we will combine the tag that you choose with a sequential number so that we wind up with photographs named bedroom 1001, bedroom 1002. The thinking is that you will walk into a room, take some photos, you upload them to SMMware, and they all wind up with related file names. All right, so now we have our images uploaded. We can click on that to start moving through them as a gallery. We can also create a note. We can see who uploaded the photo and when. We can download it. We can share it. We can rotate it. We can change the tag and the file name, all these things. And we also have two different file managers, a regular and a restricted. The thinking here is that rather than have you go photo by photo and mark some as restricted and some as more general access, we give you a separate bucket. And this is a place where you would put signed contracts, things that you may not want everybody in the company to see. So that's why you would put it up into the restricted file manager. The regular file manager is probably more for the photos that you're taking of the client's home. From here, I'll go ahead and create a sales quote. In SMMware, creating a sales quote is a question of mixing and matching the various building blocks that we give you. And this is a list of those different blocks, but I'm going to use one of the templates. After you've used the system for a while, you're creating a template, or you're going to want to create a template, and then use that as your starting spot. This is a client block. It has information about the client themselves. This is a header block. It's got large, bold texts to help you visually divide up the quote. Then from there, we get down into the line items. And the items that are in gray are either going to be pulled from somewhere else or calculated for you. So for instance, if I change this to 2 hours, it's recalculating this to 90, but the 45 is pulled from somewhere else. SMMware offers you two different ways that you can charge your clients. The most straightforward approach is to have a single hourly rate that applies to literally every hour in the project. However, if you want to charge different hourly rates depending on the kind of work being done within that same project, you can use something called job codes. A job code is simply a label and a rate. Moving down the page, a few other blocks that we'll touch on is the summary block. This is the legal block, and here we can put in some short codes that are used for e-signing. For e-signing, we need two different things. We need their name and how we're going to contact them. That can be either an email address or a phone number, and we offer the various tags for shortcuts. So if you put in client and email, SMMware will translate the keyword client into the name of the client and their email, or it'll translate this keyword of email into their email address for signing purposes. All right, next I will go ahead and show you the PDF that you can generate. Your system would have its own header image. You would not be using this more generic SMMware one, but you can get a sense of what the client would see. We can also email the, I forgot to put an email address. That's why this is grayed out. But we can also email the same PDF as an attachment. And the next thing to talk about is the idea that when you give somebody a quote and then they want some revisions, here we're working with the first version of the quote. We're going to copy and save that. Now we have the second version of the quote. And we also have this field. It's marked as being private. It's called the quote version notes. And here we can tell ourselves, our future selves, why we had to create a new version. Now I'm going back from the quote to the main sales lead, and we can see that in addition to the new quote button, we now have edit quote 1 and edit quote 2. So if you have multiple versions, they're gathered conveniently together for you under that sales lead, instead of having a single list where maybe we have version 1, then we have 4 or 5 quotes for other people, and then you see version number 2. So maybe it's a little bit hard to pick out the history of what we've been doing with this particular opportunity. All right, so that's what I wanted to tell you about sales leads. From here, we're going to look at jobs. This is a listing page, and we have a gray filter area here, this filter bar. And you'll see that on pretty much every page that offers a listing. I'll go down to one particular job and open it for editing. And I think the main point to see here is how similar it is to the sales lead, because they are, after all, two sides of the same coin. The difference is here is that instead of a sales lead status, we have a job status. Instead of a lead salesperson, we have a team lead. One of the other things to talk about is the idea that you can customize the job code rates for a sales lead or for a job. So in our settings editor, you would create this various job codes and you would assign a default rate. And then when you create the sales lead or you create the job, SMMware creates a copy of those rates for that sales lead or for that job. But then you can tweak those. So if you're in a very competitive situation and you want to shave off the rate a little bit in order to win the work, or if you're in a difficult situation, you know it's going to be a lot of extra work with this particular client, maybe you can raise the rates to account for that. So between the regular and the job code approaches, SMMware does offer very powerful options for how you can charge your clients. Moving down the page, I would point out that the job custom fields are the same as the sales lead custom fields, and the information that you entered into the sales lead would be carried over to the job. It's typically information that you want your team to have. Much as we had a status board section in the sales lead, we have one here for the job. In this case, our status levels are good, flag, and alert. And also you can customize those just as you did, or you could for the sales lead. And once again, we can mess with the categories of information that we're looking to collect. And we also have an area for uploading files and creating tasks. We'll be getting into some of that a little bit more later. All right, so having looked at a job, the next thing I'd like to talk about are associate profiles, and then looking at recording hours and expenses. So here we are under an associate profile. And what I'd point out here is the ability to upload a portrait. Later when we look at the scheduling, we'll see that the clients may get an email about your event with them, and whoever's in charge for the day, their portrait can appear, and making the client more comfortable with opening the door to people who they otherwise would not be familiar with. Moving down the page, just as we have flexible options for how you charge your clients, we also have options, some very powerful and flexible options for how you pay your associates. So here under the pay levels area, there are the simple approach has 4 different things it can distinguish between a team member and a team lead, whether they're working the weekday or the weekend. And you can simply mark that this rate is the team member during the week, this is the team member during the weekend, and the same thing for the team lead status. Because it's common for a given person, once they are acting as a team lead, that they still may act as a team member on other projects. We can also tie the pay levels to the job codes. So if you have a specialized job code like floor planning, you can get, and then you have one employee who specializes in running that program that does the floor planning, you can give them a rate that is specific for floor planning. So when they enter their hours and they say the job code is floor planning, then SMMware will apply their floor planning rate. So between these various options, you can cover a lot of approaches to how you charge your, or how you pay your employees. Next, we're going to talk about permissions. We have an overall default permission here. And I think the main takeaway from below that is that there's a bunch of different permissions that you can set and fine tune exactly what the workers can see. So what we're showing you today is the full-blown, soup to nuts tour of SMMware. And it is true that sometimes people feel a little bit overwhelmed, but keep in mind that, first of all, your associates who are basic level users will only see a very limited set of functions that, so they don't have nearly as much information to look at. But then even you as an admin or a company owner, we can turn off features that you're not using and do various other things so that you can start off with a minimal profile, and then you can open it up as you become more familiar and comfortable with all the different features. We also have a section for HR type activities. You can upload files. So let's say that you took notes, you scan it to a PDF, and you're looking for a place to put it. That makes sense. The HR file manager is the place to do that. The only people who can see anything under HR are people who have HR functionality. So the worker whose profile this is, they would not see anything that you've put in the system unless they themselves had HR privileges. Next, we're going to look at recording hours. And the first approach I'm going to show you assumes that you've done all the work for that day, and as you're leaving, you're going to create some entries. We're going to put in the date. We're going to pick the job that the work was done for. We'll put in the start and end times. I'd like to point out that SMMware has type hinting. So I typed 9A, and SMMware understands that you probably mean 9 a.m. And I put 4P. I don't even have to select from the drop-down. I can just click away, and SMMware will understand that 4P means 4 p.m. You can also mark the hours as being billable or not. And we can write a description. There's a little tag over there where you can access some predefined terms, which you also can customize. Next, SMMware offers a formula for paying your workers or charging your clients for travel based on distance. If you're going to charge based on time, that's just another time entry, but this is for charging based on distance. And you can, for a given period of time, you can say that the first X number of miles are free, and then every mile after that is whatever rate per mile that you want. And here I just put in the grand total miles, and SMMware will do the math for you. If I worked in one place in the morning and another place in the afternoon, I can click on the Add New Row button and take care of both entries at once. You don't have to do it one entry at a time and then rinse and repeat. This area at the top is where you would create new entries. Down below that, we can see our existing entries and edit them. Once they're part of an invoice, then you can view them, but you can't edit them anymore because they're part of an invoice, unless you free them from the invoice. So this is the first approach to entering hours, where you will wait until the work is done and then you create your entry. We also support the idea of a time clock, where at the start of work, you go ahead and you click the button and start the clock running, and then you do your work, you come back later on, and then you stop the clock. Next, we're going to talk about expenses. It works much the same way as entering your hours. I'm going to choose the date that the expense was incurred on and for which job. In this case, I'm putting in the dollar amount instead of the time. And I'm also picking a vendor. The little nuances to SMMware as well. I have a default vendor that is picked so that I don't have to, minimizes how often you have to change the vendor. And we can also mark this as billable or not. We can take a photograph of the receipt and upload it to SMMware to have it associated directly with this expense, as opposed to having it mixed in with the file manager. Once again, we're going to have a description, which I can either type out or pick from a list. This is a list specific for the expenses compared to the list that we had for entering hours. And the last thing to talk about here is this radio button, reimbursable versus company. And here you are telling SMMware whether or not the employee paid out of pocket. So this radio button is not about whether the client is going to reimburse you. This is about whether your company needs to reimburse your worker. And if so, then I would mark it as reimbursable. And once again, we have the upper area for entering expenses that are new and the lower area for reviewing expenses that are already in the system. Next, we're going to talk about invoices. So I'm going to Admin and then Invoice Manager. So we'll pick on some. All right, and for here, I'll point out first that we have different status levels. I'm going to roll this one back to being preliminary. And in SMMware, invoices assume a date range. That way, if you're going to have a long project and maybe you want to bill every month, then you can limit the entries on this invoice to that date range. We also let you put in a due date for the invoice. We have the note that the client will see. It's marked as being note for the invoice. We have another note that is marked for company use, and this is one that will not appear on the invoice that the client sees. SMMware is full of little nuances that have been added over time based on user feedback. And one of those is that you may want a senior living center, for instance, to appear as the payor. And we can override the client's name as the payor by filling in an entry, and then it'll fill in the address for you. So by default, it's going to show the client as the payor, but then you can, as I said, override that. Below that are the line items for the invoice, and you can add new ones or edit them from within SMMware. That's true for the hours, the expenses, the fees. Here you can see the mileage charges. Within our system, you have the ability to say that you do or do not charge for travel, and maybe you do or not charge for packing supplies. Here we can make adjustments. So let's say that a vase was broken and you're going to take $50 off. Then that's where you would handle that. Or maybe they already give you some money up front and you need to account for that as well. That would be here. SMMware also has an option where the receipts for the items that are this invoice for the various expenses can be appended to the end of the invoice that the client would see. So that way they can see everything that you are asking to be reimbursed for. SMMware has an optional feature for the idea that team leads would approve the invoice, since they're the ones who were on site and they know who was there and what work was done. And that's what we're talking about for TL approved. That means team lead approved. I forgot to mention the scan for line items button. When you create a new invoice and you set the date, you can then click on the scan item button, and SMMware will pull in all the invoicing or the hours and expenses that match that date range. So I'm going to go ahead and save the idea that I moved this up to being approved. And now we have some buttons for seeing some PDFs. SMMware offers 3 different formats that you can pick from at any time. The summary format is handy when you have somebody, a client, where the more detail they see, the longer the conversation is going to be before they finally sign off. This version only has high-level line items, the total fees, the total labor. It doesn't break it down on a day-by-day basis or worker-by-worker basis, just the grand totals. On the other hand, you do have some clients where the more detail you show them, they're going to scan it, they're going to see all the stuff that you did, and then they're going to feel like the cost is entirely justified. They're not going to question it. And so that's a shorter conversation than if you showed them just the summary. Then on the other hand, we have the roll-up version. If you have a really long invoice, maybe you feel like it's too long, you can have SMMware roll up the items for a given day into a single line item. Because under the detailed version, every worker has a line item. So if you have 5 people on a given day, then you'll see 5 line items. And then if they come back the next day, you'll have another 5 line items. So then the roll-up version would narrow that down to just 2 line items. All right, so that is invoicing. From here, I'm going to move on. That is the end of our first track. We talked about clients and jobs and sales leads and quotes, and then entering hours. Talked about associate profiles, and now we're finished up with that. And moving on to the section we call resources. You can think of this as a vendor list to start with, but we don't call it that. There are some nuances to it. But we have the organizations, which are companies, and we have contacts who are people who work at those companies. If I go to look at the organization manager, when I come here, I see it's divided up into categories. And then under a given category, we can expand this in order to see all the different sub-entries. So for instance, if somebody asks you for who would be good for plumbing, you can come to the vendors, you can see the home improvement section, and you can find Carlton Plumbing and pass along their information to the clients. We can also export this list, assuming that we have the higher level privileges, more than just reading. And we can export either the whole list or certain categories. And the most common usage for this is around the holidays when people want to send out lists or holiday cards. Although that actually, now I think about it, that's under the context more so than the organizations. But we'll get to that in a minute. So we're going to look at a profile for an organization. And I would like to point out that you can mark them as being schedulable, and that makes them an option that you can pick when you're looking at the calendar. But we're going to get into more detail about that when we talk about scheduling. We can assign them to categories or more than one category. So let's say you have a business partner and you can't quite agree on which category this vendor belongs in. You can actually have them in both. That's fine. Here's where we can see the contacts for this organization, and there would be one line for each contact. We also have the ability to upload files, create tasks, write notes. A common usage for the file manager here is, let's say it's a moving company, and then you have a certificate of insurance and you want a place to put that. This is the perfect spot where you'll always be able to find it. The next thing is you can create a task, and that task you can set a due date to match the expiration date of the certificate. So now SMMware has the certificate and will also remind you when it's time to get a new one. You can also write some notes. When we were looking at the job profiles, I forgot to mention that you can assign various organizations to it. So it could be a moving company or attorney, a realtor. And then when you come to the organization profile, you can see all the jobs that this organization was assigned to. So that way, let's say that you have a vendor that you're asking a favor for, and they're not sure they're going to do it. And you come here and you see that, well, we've sent them like 30 projects in the past, 8 months. Then you might mention that as a way of trying to persuade them to be a little more flexible. So from here, we're going to look at the details of a contact. The usual items here, the name and email and so on. But I would like to point out that you can mark this person as sending business to you. You can also mark them as whether they act as a client rep or not, which might be handy for, say, an attorney. But the refers clients to us in combination to the date of last contact. That information is driving some other functionality in SMMware that appears on the home page and helps us keep in touch with the people who are sending us business, which of course is very important. And once again, we can upload files, create tasks, and write notes for this particular contact. I think it's more common to put that under the organization than the contact. People do come and go at various vendors, and you may not want that kind of track record to go with them. You might want it to stay with the organization. So I'm going to go back to the organization. Make sure there's nothing else that I missed before we move on. This is our second track for the tour, and it's the shortest one. Once again, we just talked about organizations and contacts. From here, we're going to start talking about the tasks in more detail, the notes, and then we're going to get into scheduling. Okay. So I'm looking at a particular job, and I'm moving down to the tasks area. And you can modify the tasks from here. So here's a task I'm going to mark as finished. I can also change the priority, the title, the date that it's due. If I have to edit more of the task than what's appearing here, I can edit the full task here. Within SMMware, we've got the due date. We've got a couple of reminder dates, the status. When it comes to assigning the task to somebody, some systems you can assign multiple people to the task, but they're all just in a list. So it's kind of a situation where everybody's in charge, so nobody's in charge. And we don't agree with that approach. So what we have here is a place where you assign it to a particular person primarily, and then we can have secondary associates or secondary assignees from among the other various associates. There we go. And that way it is clear who is in charge. All right, so I'm going to get out of this task. We can also see the printable version of this, and it gets rid of all the fancy graphics. It's an easy way of scanning through all of the tasks at once. After you've worked with the system for a while, you'll notice that you're creating the same kinds of tasks over and over again at the different phases of a project. And you might ask if SMMware can help you manage those more conveniently. And our answer is yes. We have something called task groups. And each one of these buttons is a task group. It's more than one task. You define the name of the task group and all the different tasks that go in it. So I'm going to click on one of these, and I'll see that it has 1, 2, 3 tasks in it. And a lot of the information is pre-filled for you. That comes from our settings editor. If I don't need one of these tasks, I can just get rid of it using the X button. Now we just have 2 tasks. And this approach helps you with consistency in 2 ways. First of all, let's say you have 10 tasks in a task group, all 10 of them appear, and then you can get rid of the ones you don't need this time around, which is more reliable than trying to remember all 10 of those tasks to create them one at a time. It is also going to help you with consistency because the pre-filled text helps you just tweak it when you need to, so then your tasks are going to use a lot of the same language. All right, so I'm going to move on and look at notes. Notes are simpler than tasks. And we just have a summary and we have the details. And the details area, once again, has some pre-filled text, and various kinds of notes can have different pre-filled text. So you can fine-tune it for the job, fine-tune it for an organization, things like that. The note that was entered by one person cannot be modified by another person unless that person's an admin. So that way you can feel confident that the note that was written by Jane is in fact by Jane, and another one by Tammy was written by Tammy. Next, we have an area that allows you to log that a call came in. When you create a call, it's a lot like a task, but now you can use it either to log that a call came in, or you can use it to plan a future call. So if it's a future call, I'll put a date in the future along with the time. Put in the summary, some reminder dates. And since this is a future call, now it's important to know whether I'm calling them or they're calling me. And particularly if I have to call them, the phone number becomes important. And once again, we can have the signees and the secondary signees. From here, I'm going to jump over to the home page. This is your dashboard, your daily snapshot. When we're looking at jobs, I talked about a status board, and here it is. It is the 30,000-foot view of how things are going for your company. And ideally, they would all say good, but if they need attention, you can look over here, see what's going on. You can contact them. You can update the note. Then you can mark it as now it's good. So at the end of the day, hopefully they're all green and you can head home. Otherwise, you may have to take care of a few things before you can do that. We have a similar status board for sales. So now you can see how your sales efforts are going. Once again, we have the hot lead, medium lead, cold lead approach, but you're allowed to set your own. Moving down the page, we have the task center. And this is where you see by default the tasks that are assigned to you under my tasks. But I can also see the secondary tasks. So if you are a secondary assignee, we separate those out because we want you to focus on the tasks where you're the primary. If you create a task, to assign it you assign it to somebody else, you delegate it. You can keep track of how those are going from here with the My Delegated Tasks section. If you are a higher level user, then you can see this item, all unfinished tasks. And I'll point out that a task which is late is now going to be in red. And just a reminder, we can also modify the various values that we're looking at here. So it's easy to go down this list and make updates. We have a call center that is pretty much the same as the task center, except of course it works with calls. Moving down, we have the hour and expense items for approval. I had not mentioned it earlier, but we do have an optional feature for approving hours and expenses before they're allowed to appear on an invoice. And if I'm a team lead for a job, I would come here and see the various projects that I have that have items that need my approval. On the other hand, if I am the person who did the work and my entry was rejected, then I would come here and see a list of my rejected entries, and I can go edit them, resubmit them to the system. Then they'll appear back for the team lead and back and forth until everybody's happy with how that reads. Next, we have, for convenience, 2 lists of projects, one which you're the team lead, and then another one for where you're a team member. We separate those because you have to put more attention towards the ones where you are the team lead. When we were looking at contacts, we mentioned the idea that somebody refers business to you, and we mentioned the idea of date of last contact. And if you haven't been in touch with somebody for a while, we consider them to be stale. So you look at this list, and ideally all these dates would be recent. And your job is to get in touch with them, and then you can work through this list and mark them, say, okay, now I've been in touch with them. And you go down the list, you hit the refresh button, and when all of these dates are recent, then you're done with your work. If you are using the invite approach for your scheduling and you are invited to an event, you would see that here, and then you can request or decline going to that event. So now we're moving into the scheduling. The bottom section of each page is my schedule. And just like it sounds, it's only going to show me the events that I am part of as an attendee or maybe as the main contact. So this is not everything across the entire company. If I do have permission to see the master calendar, then I'll have this link. I can click on that and see everything that's going on across the entire company. Scrolling down, I'll point out the idea of calendar tags. SMMware offers 30 calendar tags. You can hide the ones you're not using, but you can set the color and you can set the label, and you can do that in a way that makes sense to you for how you want to organize your events. But there are 3 different approaches that we've seen. The most simple is to distinguish between an event that is for a job and an event that is for sales. Another thing you can do is create tags that are based on the kind of work being done that day. So here's a purple tag and it says pack, and a dark olive that says unpack. And here we've got some events. Here's one pack, here's one packing. And for instance, that can help you keep track that packing days have unpacking days. You haven't missed that. Next, we can have an approach where we keep track of who is in charge that day. So I have a tag for Judy and Carmen and Margot, who are people that are commonly in charge of an event. And then we can see the events up here. This one's for Margot. And then this last tag is the ability to create events that are tied to an organization. So if you're going to be giving a seminar at a senior living center, then that can be official. You can create an event that is officially tied to that organization here. And tying events to either a job or to a sales lead or to an organization, that is important, because that way when you go to look at the job, we can give you a list of events for that job. So that's why we want to tie them together. When we're looking at the details of the events, you might see a map link. And when you click on that, you're going to be taken to your phone's Google Map or Apple Map, and then they will give you the turn-by-turn GPS directions to get to your destination. We can also see if the client has confirmed. So when we create an event in SMMware, we can send the clients an email saying, hey, you're now booked with an event. We can set up some reminders, and we can also ask them to confirm that they received the message. And if they have, it will appear here. Down at the bottom, we have details about who is attending. And so you can see their full names. When we look at the calendar itself, we can see the name of the client. We can see after who, we have the list of the attendees, but just their initials. And then we want to see their full names. We can click on it to see that. And here we can see the dates or the time ranges that people are going to be there. All right. Next, I'm going to create a brand new event so we can see what that's like. And we will choose a tag. I chose job. Then SMMware naturally wants to know which job. Moving down, we can see that the text is preloaded for you, much like other fields in SMMware. And that comes from the settings editor. You can have your own preset text. Here we see an icon with a house and an arrow pointing out of it. That is where somebody is moving out of. And I'm going to change that to a different job just so that we can see here's an icon of a house with an arrow pointing into it. So that is the address that they're moving to. So when I put the mouse inside the field and I click on the icon, I will get that address. When we go back to the main view, that becomes the map link that you click on. We can set some reminders that go out to the associates who are part of this, this event. And then here's where we can set reminders for the clients. SMMware will send out notifications at the time that the event is created or modified, but sometimes you want to skip having any notifications going out, and we give you some buttons here for doing exactly that. Here under Event Lead, this is where you can say who's in charge for the day. SMMware has a team lead for the job as a whole, which might involve multiple visits to the client, and then you can, for each visit, have somebody in charge designated here. All right, so now we're talking about how you manage who is going to attend. SMMware has 3 different approaches, and each one has its own assumptions and basic underlying idea. The basic or the direct approach assumes that you made some sort of decision during a company meeting or driving back from the last event. So we really just need SMMware to formalize things and get it into the system. So the notifications here are to the associates are just going to say you are assigned. The next approach is called invite-based. And here we're going to set a team size because we want to keep in mind how many people we really want. It's not a social event, where you invite 10 people, only 9 can show up, and that's fine. But for a business event, you really do want 3 people. So we can use this in a few different ways. We can invite 5 people, and then maybe 4 of them can do it, and 1 of them can't. And then out of those 4, we'll have a final step where we assign a team, and then the person who is not assigned gets a notification saying, I'm sorry, the team is full. We can do the shotgun approach where we invite everybody, and then the first people who respond up to the team size, they'll say, okay, your request is recorded. And then after that, it'll say, I'm sorry, the team is full. The third approach is based on availability. So under this approach, the employees will go to My Unavailability. And here they can say that, well, for next week, I am not available on Friday afternoon or Friday morning and Thursday afternoon. And I can, when I click on one of these, it turns orange because I'm selecting it. If I want to get rid of it, I can click on it again. I can stretch it. I can slide it over to the other day if I was just mistaken. I can use these time fields at the top to adjust the time. Once again, you can use the hinting. So I'm saying 3 p.m. This is an event that I'm already assigned to, so that appears here as well. If you are already assigned to an event, you are not allowed to remove yourself from here. You would contact whoever's in charge of the event to make sure they know. We can also write a note for your unavailability. Some people, within some companies, they might want like a reminder, well, it's a doctor's appointment or it's a vacation or something like that. In any case, this is the starting point. The workers fill out when they are not available. There's an option where everybody does it based on availability, but my unavailability is more popular. After that information has already been entered into the system, we're looking at this event, and we see a timeline across the top. We see a list of workers down the left, and we see these green bars with the label that says available. And I click on that, it starts a shift, and then I can adjust the shift start and end times. This is our fanciest approach to events and attendance because the other approaches do assume that everybody is arriving and leaving at the same time. And then this one allows people to arrive and leave at different times. All right, and that is our approach to scheduling. From here, we'll talk about integrations. We have an integration with QuickBooks, both online and desktop. We have another one with MailChimp, which is a mass emailing tool. And then we also have an integration with something called Zapier. Zapier is a way of letting SMMware talk to other software packages because it's not possible to program SMMware to talk directly to every program that's out there. And one way of letting SMMware talk to other programs is Zapier, which is middleware. So SMMware can tell Zapier that there's a new client, and then Zapier can tell some other program that you designate that, hey, there's a new client. We are going to be, in about a week, launching a new approach to integrations. It's called a REST API, which is a technical term. But the bottom line is it lets other software packages talk to SMMware. And the Zapier approach is something that you might be able to set up yourself. You go to Zapier and you have some options and you're mixing and matching fields, and it's pretty straightforward and understandable. For the REST API idea, it is a more powerful approach, but it would probably involve hiring a programmer who just the one time they have to set things up for you, and then after that, you would be good to go. But the REST approach is very powerful for the number of things that it can do. It's a little more powerful than Zapier, but it does require a little bit of setup. All right, so the last thing to discuss is how you can learn about SMMware and how you might sign up for SMMware. So we go to the corporate website and just show you, we have the company manuals. So here's where you can learn about SMMware using the written word for For those of us who still read, we mostly watch videos these days, I think. But here's the PDF and here's the web page version. And going back to the video idea, we've got youtube.com/SMMware. That is our YouTube channel. And here we have about 40 or so videos. I'm going to pick the playlist that says Overview of SMMware. And here on the right-hand side, you can see all the list of videos that we have. Some of them are high level, much like the tour we just took. Some of them are very topic specific, but shorter. So here's 10 minutes on the invoice manager. Here's a few minutes on the organizations and contacts, and so on. You can also learn about SMMware within the app using the built-in help. When I'm looking at scheduling or various commands, you might come to one that has a specific page. My unavailability does not, but this one. So we have help that's specifically for the schedule. Going back to the idea of how you learn about SMMware, here under the pricing and sign up section, we have webinars and training. And I'll mention Liz Donovan. She is our accredited trainer. She is separate from SMMware, so there is a fee involved, but she's always gotten great reviews for everybody that I've spoken to. And she can help you not just with learning the path you click on to get from point A to point B, but also for advising you on all these different lists that we said that you can customize, and for how you want to, match SMMware to your needs and customize things. And lastly, for people who might want to try the 30-day free trial, we come to the pricing and sign up page, and you can see that our pricing, it starts at $30 a month for up to 3 users, and then increases pretty gradually as you add more users. Again, you have 30 days free to start with, and then also you have no annual commitment. It's just month to month. So that is the grand tour of SMMware. I would mention that this is the first time we're using Zoom, and I thought you would be able to speak freely the way that I had things set up, but it looks like you have to ask to talk. So if anybody has any questions and wants to speak, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and I'd be happy to do that. For those who come up with questions later on, you can always go to our corporate website, and you will, of course, find our phone number and be able to talk to us that way as well. You can also reach me just by emailing sales@smmmware.com. All right, so if there's not any more questions, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. I appreciate your time and hope everybody has a great rest of the evening. Bye now.